Welcome back to ManaTutor MTG Draft. Today we're going to do a deep dive into a particular archetype. It's an archetype that has eluded both of us for quite a while in this set, so if it's eluded you, don't fret, you're in good company. But we think we've solved what is an issue for us, and that's in blue-red. Blue-red has kind of evaded both of us, I think for a few reasons. While we both tilt aggro, but specifically in this set, the course has been black-red was just the best color pair, still is, right? And it was open the first couple weeks. We played that. As sets progress, the best colors are not open anymore, so you have to pivot somewhere. We both simultaneously pivoted into white, and it worked well for us. And then if you think about it, the blue color pairs, blue-green is horrible. It's the worst win rate. Blue-white is pretty close to that. That's, I think, second worst. So the colors you want to play are blue-black, blue-red, and that's really it. And if black was open already, we would take that and go into our second color being red or white or something, right? Like we've shifted the
Yeah,
aggro approach. Blue
yeah,
black, not a bad pair. It's a good control deck, but we didn't find ourselves in that. And so it's really blue red. And when we've drafted that, we haven't done well. In fact, Matt, have you had a chance to really draft this one much?
I almost did it a couple of times, but I ended up aborting it about halfway through the draft, where I think I started with red and then I picked up some blue cards, but then I was seeing a bunch of good white cards, and so I shifted into red white,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I think there were a couple where I splashed blue for something like Bilbo, right?
right.
To do like the red blue Bilbo. But yeah, I mean, I actually have not played a pure blue red yet.
Yeah.
But I've wanted to. It looks very interesting. I've seen some really good decks, some really good trophy decks, and I think we're going to discuss some of those here today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always something that's kind of at the corner of my mind. Like if it works out, I'd love to try it, but for some reason or another, I find myself pulled in another direction.
Yeah, I think as we were doing like black white and white red and things like that, other people were prioritizing this blue red particular deck, and in some ways we were kind of getting cut from blue, right? Like people, it's
Yeah,
a good deck,
yeah,
and I think the problem that we ran into is that there are two different versions of this deck, and if we drafted kind of half and half, it wouldn't go well. And you'll see that with some of the drafts that I did here. I think I drafted this about six times. Two of those
mm,
times I did go 6-3. And I did splash white, I think, in both of those, but they're still blue red decks, and they fit into a particular. Those ones were both aggro, but the other four times I only have two other records: 1-3 and 0-3. I think I had twice of both, so not so good. And I could tell the difference was that I had drafted two different decks in one deck, and it didn't work out.
yeah,
In particular, what I think has thrown me a little astray is I do like relying on stats. I think it's a good way to get past biases of the look of the feel of things while I'm drafting, which I still do value, so I can help see when
hmm
the stats don't make sense. But like all the different the decks that I haven't drafted, like trying to get insight into that, I would look at the blue and the red and see the individual card stats, and I'd just draft all the high ones. And
yeah,
sometimes those were high because they're technically, though, two different decks. And so getting all the high ones together was not the right play.
yeah. No, that makes sense.
So, in particular, here's actually my latest red blue deck. You'll see when you bring it up, it like looks like it's a reasonable deck with the win rate. The cards not going well together, though, is kind of what I want to point out here. I got a lot of Saruman's Trickery, high win rate, great card. Um, to some degree, this one can play into both styles, but I do think Saruman's Trickery does a bit better in the control version.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then there's an aggro version as well that cards like Soothing of Smeagol and Horses of Bruinen go in better into.
Yes.
Some cards split the difference, like Birthday Escape.
Yep. Great card in any blue deck.
Yeah. But the control decks in particular seem to balance or be based off of two different cards. Gandalf's Sanction, to have instants and sorceries and kind of make this your finisher,
Yep.
and Fiery Inscription.
Yep.
Similar pattern of playing the instants and sorceries. I think Fiery Inscription helps aid a little bit more the aggro style, slightly more shifted aggro than the Gandalf Sanction, but I still think both are keys to making the control deck work.
100%. Yeah. No, you Fire Inscription is basically, and I've lost so many games against Fiery Inscription, right? Because you don't main board enchantment removal most of the time,
right,
unless you've got like a Westfold Rider in your deck. So like I've probably lost at least 4 or 5 games through all my drafts because somebody played Fiery Inscription and they just ended up killing me by casting an instant or sorcery, right? Or they did enough damage that they were able to just finish me off with a couple of creatures. Whereas if they didn't have Fiery Inscription, I would have won the game. Absolutely.
Right.
It plays really well in the control style, but it can play in the aggro.
If all their cards are stopping you and they're doing 2 damage with every card that stops you,
every time they're casting a card, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially if a lot of those are cantrips, right? Like a Birthday Escape is the perfect example of this, right? Like Birthday Escape on its own, okay, it's basically a shock at that point.
Right.
I mean, that's effectively what it's doing. It's a shock with a draw.
Plus a ring tempt. But
plus a ring tempt,
that matters
less. You may or may not care about that in the control version.
Right.
But it's like if you put a cantrip on a shock and said, have fun. That's a really good card.
Another one that fits that kind of boat is Hithlay Knots.
Yep.
I was trying, because some of these cards read like they could be good in either version, but that's a little deceptive. Like Hithlay Knots, you don't really want to be playing turn 2 in an aggro deck, tapping some other creature, draw a card, right? This is really, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is a late game thing for the aggro, tap down their blocker and get on in, but that's not really how you get in. You get in with ring tempt into the aggro, so you don't need to tap down their big creatures. This is more early plays to slow down your opponent and draw a card, scry one. Kind of feed into that whole cantrip approach.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, this is definitely the control version of the deck. You don't want to play it in the aggro version for the reasons you've said. And, Soothing of Smeagol is the card you play in the aggro version because then you can return their person, get a ring temp, attack. They no longer have a blocker. You're potentially, hitting them for more damage if you're getting to like the level 4 ring temp or something. But the beauty of this is like you remove their small blocker, right? You don't care about their big blocker if you've got a ring bearer. You remove their 1/1 or their 1/3 or whatever, so that you can get in with your ring bearer. And that's what makes that one definitely part of the aggro deck, I think.
Right. So it's interesting. Part of the strategy of draft is keeping your future paths as open as possible to get into a good deck, right? And so you want to be drafting the cards that fit into either first. So that's cards like we already mentioned, Birthday Escape. That's probably what makes it one of the top commons, is it's just always good. Pelargir Survivor, I think, is a tricky one that most people might not think is good in both. It's good as a defender, 1/3, right? And casting your instants and sorceries with it, great. And even the milling effect. I lost a game earlier this week because I was milling out from that.
I've lost games to somebody milling me out with Pelargir Survivor. It's not fun. That's usually more in the blue-black version of the deck with Mouth of Sauron and things like that. Yeah. But it can happen in a longer game, right? If you get into a drawn-out match with someone,
right?
Yeah, it's a threat.
But even for aggro, because aggro relies on ring tempt, and ring tempt carrying so much that your power is lower than your toughness, as a 1/3, it's a pretty darn good ring bearer. If you can, blue-red can really get to level 4 pretty quickly if you're doing it right, and swinging on in unblockable 4 damage each time in your blue-red deck.
And if you happen to have something like Dreadful as the Storm, which I also think is the aggro version of the deck, right? that helps even more, right? Say you're a level 3 ring temp, you attack in with your ring bearer. Congratulations, you're now level 4, so they're losing 9 life at that point.
Right.
Like that can't be overrated as a finisher. I know a lot of people think it's not the best card, but I think situationally in the aggro version of this deck, it is actually a very strong card.
Yeah, so with those two different decks, I think we've kind of already talked about some of the key differences. The Soothing of Smeagol versus Hithlade Knots, I think, is a really good indicator of where you're at. The Gandalf Sanction and Fiery Inscription is not necessarily an indicator, because while I think it's critical for the control, they still can be good in the aggro. They're just good cards, right?
Yeah. There's some ones that if you see those early, you can take and be open in both versions, right? Yeah. Taking Fiery Inscription means you're maybe leaning a little bit more towards aggro, same with Gandalf Sanction, but control, not aggro. But you can still play either version of that deck, pick up some of the good commons, and kind of see what makes it to the later end of the pack if you decide that you're going to go for one or the other. But I think the purpose is we want to talk about, committing to one or the other, not trying to split that difference, right? Because splitting the difference is what gets you into some trouble.
Right. It is stay open early so you can go either path, but once you see what kind of path you're going down, you do need to commit at some point and focus on that rather than making all your picks be half and half, because otherwise you end up with a half and half deck like this. I have one here, I think 0-3, similar thing. Hithlane Knots, Glorious Scale. I mean, that actually is this is not a bad approach for control here. But the problem is I didn't get anything that would help control past that. I got a heck of a lot of Oliphants.
You've got the beat down at the end there. I can tell that. Yeah.
But that's not enough to do it.
Yeah. And things you can immediately see that are kind of, I won't say wrong with this, but are a challenge, right? Like Bilbo, that's definitely in what you would consider the control version of the deck, I think, because you want those ring temps, or the aggro version. Sorry, the aggro version of the deck. You want those ring temps to get in, but you're looking at the rest of what you have. There's not really any other ring temps here, right? I don't actually see any, or maybe I'm missing some, but Relentless Rohirrim, right? Yeah. Relentless Rohirrim is a ring temp,
And how many ring temps you need to be aggro as well, I think, is also a good discussion. And so this is one that the numbers were pulled by Seer Kovitz of Magic Numbers in a recent YouTube episode, so I will point you over there to go check that out. But he basically
don't tell me. I'm gonna guess.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, so I'll give you I won't give you the answer, but what he did. He charted win rate by how many cards of ring temp you have in your deck and kind of how that looks. And there's a certain maybe you can guess the shape of that. And I'll start there because I don't want to give it away. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm guessing it's a bell curve, but I'm gonna guess the number is around 7 or 8.
Yeah, so the bell curve is it's like inverse bell curve, right? But I think you're exactly what you mean. It's there's not a whole lot as you get more ring temps, but you only have say 2, 3, or 4. Your win rate actually gets lower because ring temp cards are not as generically powerful. Sure. But as you get a critical mass of them, they become more and more powerful, right? And so that critical mass has to be enough to at least get to ring temp 2. And then for this deck, I think you really want to be able to actually get to 4 in the aggro version, right?
Sure, yeah.
So how many... So this did not split out. This was not for blue-red, his numbers. How many cards of ring temp do you think you need to get before you start skyrocketing up in win rate with the ring temp?
I was going to say 7 or 8. Probably I'll go with 8.
Yeah. So 6 to 7 was 6 was where it was starting a trend up. 7 had a pretty significant jump, and then from there everything up was good. So you really want to have 7. I mean, and honestly, 8 was better, 9 was better, right? And the win rate kept on going up all the way up to I think he even had a number for 16. Now the sample size of that I'm sure was pretty small.
Sure. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but
But
but no, it like continuously went up.
yeah.
So yeah, if you can get there to 7 in ring temps, you want to really start getting even more ring temps. But if you have under say 6, you're probably going to have a hard time being the aggro deck, because I do think blue red, that's where its power lies in the aggro. Is you can chip in some damage and all that, but you really can finish them off with the ring
Sure.
temp mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you're not going to have the most creatures on the board.
Right.
Right. And so your power lies in having essentially an unblockable creature in this case that you can hit somebody with as your ring bearer. I've actually this is a little off the beaten path for blue red, but I've actually thought about the good, if there is a good version of, and I have not found it yet, but if there is a good version of green blue, I think it lies with Ring Tempt and Nimrodel Watcher, because Nimrodel Watcher is the 2/1 that when you scry it gets +1/+0 and unblockable, and so you make that your ring bearer. You go full Ring Tempt and you just start you use a bunch of scry to just consistently make that unblockable and tempt to get to level 4. Similar to like the Pelargir Survivor, right? But it's not great because it's easily blocked, because it's a 3/1 unless you can give it the unblockable with scry, right?
Right.
So anyways, little bit of a detour there, but I've thought about that a couple of times, of trying to get a Nimrodel Watcher Scry Ring Temp deck and see how well it does, because I'd be interested to see if it can pull it off.
Yeah, I think you might be. Well, I was thinking vulnerable to them killing your Nimrodel Watchers, right? Like,
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you're not going to have that many. But then again, it's nobody else really wants the card, so you might be able to catch them all and kind of do that thing.
Sure. Yeah. No. There's definitely risks there, and you'd have to run some things to prevent that, right?
Yeah.
To help save that if it came down to it. But
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be your only win comp. But I was thinking it's an opportunity potentially. If green blue is going to be good, I think that's the type of green blue that is actually good, versus sitting there and trying to put a bunch of counters on things all day long.
Yeah, like I definitely like Enraged Warren is a good card, right? Like that the green 4/5 trample that comes down with a ring tempt.
Yep.
For 5. Like those would definitely play a role. I think you might have a hard time finding good scry cards to get into. Just scry has been so bad, to feed that.
Sure.
But,
oh yeah. Yeah. No, you'd need to find good ones that you need scries with ring temps, which I think there are all of like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
In the entire set. So I'm not saying it's going to be good, but I'm thinking if there is a version of blue green that is good, that might be it. So anyways, sorry, a little bit of a detour there.
No, that's definitely, it's a fun comment, and to some degree, that's a lot of the fun of playing games too. Like, I definitely know streamers who their whole goal is to make it as good as possible, like make bad decks as good as possible, like find how to make that deck work, for example. But yeah, for blue red, maybe we can start going into some of the decks that I did better with, and kind of look at why. Well, we have.
I can tell you exactly why you did really good with this deck. You have 2 Pippins in it.
Yeah, that definitely helps. But that wasn't only it. 4 Aorcs did a lot of work.
Yeah.
This was pretty early in the set too, so I don't quite remember everything. But I have an Aomer,
Oh yeah, Aomer and 2 Pippins, that'll do it every time.
The flame is decent. I mean, it's not a bomb or anything, but the flame is decent. And the Trees and Isengard, while I've definitely have come down on the card, in this deck where I had 3/4 orcs, just to get one of those back.
Yeah. I mean, let me get amass 2 more and then amass 2 more and do damage. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's you can see the aggro there, and then you can also see the aggro here, just even looking at the the mana cost of things. So this is back when I thought Kingfisher was good. To be fair, it's not bad. I still play Kingfisher. um, but yeah.
Yeah, no, this is for sure. I mean, although interestingly, Scroll of Isildur is definitely a card I would not play in the aggro version necessarily. I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. Like tapping 2 creatures and putting them out of commission for 2 turns can allow you to attack into it. But I do see it more falling into the control version a little bit more, just because it's going to save you, give you time to build up. It's going to let you draw a lot of cards. I guess with the ring tempt on step 1,
Yeah.
though, yeah, I could see it going in either. It's another one of those ones, I guess, that can go in either.
I agree with that. I can see it going either way. My only disagreement is I actually think it is slightly better in the aggro. But your point stands that I think you could have it in both. Yeah, I like it in the aggro with the ring tempt and it's a pseudo Horses of Brunin in the stun counter tapping thing, right?
Yep.
So,
Spiteful Bantry is an interesting one. Like that, I almost think is better in the control deck.
I would agree with that. It's just powerful enough that
it's a good card.
Yeah.
I would play it in most situations, right? It's a great opportunity for a board wipe, and then giving it immediately generally is going to create a treasure token for you. So and then just the bonus on it every other time you burn something, you get a treasure, right?
Yeah. I think that might have been
interestingly, you don't have a lot of burn here.
Right. Oh yeah, I don't. I do have the improvised club.
You have improvised club.
And I have Rager's Firebrand.
Yeah, that's true. And okay, that's fair.
But yeah,
and you've got Gandalf, which Gandalf burns.
Yeah.
Oh no, to opponent. So never mind. That's not creature. But yeah, no. This one I think is good. The Elrond I question a little bit maybe.
I'm not a huge fan of Elrond either. Just at some point, you don't get all the great cards.
I will say Elrond plus Rally at the Hornburg is not bad.
Yeah,
right?
and it had 2 of those. Elrond's one of those cards that like I'll play it in any like aggro version or any control version that has enough rallies, basically, because rally is good either way. But yeah, it's not a high pick, or I basically just consider it another common that I was able to fit on in type of thing.
Yep. Interesting playing the Bewitching Leechcraft over like a Pelargir in this. Because you have a Pelargir in your side.
Yeah, this is week 1.5 or earlier, where I didn't know Pelargir Survivor was good.
Got it. Okay.
But to be fair, I also, while I still think I would definitely do that, I don't have a whole lot of a crazy amount of spells here. There's a decent amount, and I don't have really a whole ton of ring tempt, though. What's that?
No, I guess they're mostly in your 2 costs, but are pretty much exclusively in your 2 costs, your 1 and 2s. So yeah, maybe Pelargir's not the best here, but
I got 7, and I don't need to ramp to them. Pelargir isn't, I don't think, the best here, but in general, I think you do want to play it in your decks, and this is before I thought ring temp was good, honestly. So
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so those are just some of my decks. I think we want to next move into playing a game here. I mentioned earlier that I think I relied too much on the stats of individual cards in blue-red and couldn't separate out their win rate together in 2 different decks, right? What I could have done to avoid that I actually usually do in sets, I just skipped it this time, I don't know why, is look over the trophy decks a bit deeper and try to understand what's going on with the individual decks that are trophying. So to make up for that, I pulled up a ton of trophy decks, all from Mythic players, because I want to know that the decks we're looking at are you can sometimes randomly trophy off of.
It's not a one-off, right? This is not somebody that just lucked into a good deck. This is somebody who knew what the hell they were doing and designed a really good deck. Yeah.
So I pulled those up, and I think we're gonna play a game. I'll click on each one, and Matt's gonna guess. aggro or control,
Sure.
and provide a little bit of commentary on why.
Sure. All right. So first up, we have. All right. Let's look at this here. This is control. This is absolutely control in my mind. With Hithlane Knots, with 2 Gandalf sanctions, this no doubt that this is control. It's interesting. I'm looking at it, and I'm actually kind of, I'm wondering where the win con is in this. I mean, it went 7-2. It doesn't seem to have a lot of temp. Oh, let's see. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I see off the top of my head. 5 temps. Glorious Gale, I guess, is 6 if it's countering a legendary. But those are the only temps I see. So it doesn't exactly have a ton of temps, but yeah, definitely the control deck.
Right. This is where I see a couple cards, like the Real Esprohirum can actually work in both decks because it's a little bit of a finisher in a way when you otherwise don't really have it. Same with Saruman the White.
Yep.
I think those two help. But yeah, it's the 2 Gandalf sanctions are really where it's at.
Hithlane Knots, Glorious Gale, all very control. I'm somewhat questioning the cast into the fire in this. I guess, but I'm not. There are better cards. Maybe they didn't get them. I guess I'd have to go look at their sideboard. Yeah, I mean, I guess given what they got, yeah, I'd probably play it. I don't know that I'd play Bill Fernie. Right. I mean, I would almost play the Nimrodel Watcher over Bill Fernie, but I guess if you want a treasure token, if he gets blocked, sure. But I don't know. Yeah, minor differences, but yeah, definitely control.
Okay. Next one.
Even more control, right? Like instead of 2 Gandalf sanction, you have 3. Instead of 1 Glorious Gale, you have 3. Yeah, absolutely control here. The Soothing is, I think, an interesting choice, right? Because I would think is more normally in what I would put in aggro. I might have almost played a second Erebor Flamesmith over it, given the number of instants and sorceries this person has. But,
Yep.
But still, I mean, yeah, definitely control. Bath Song's is a classic control card, I think, in this situation. Although I would potentially play it in the aggro version too, just because you start running out of steam at some point. But yeah.
Yep. Agree with everything you said. Not everything. I think there will be some mixture of things that we see, like
sure, yeah. Just because you need another card and this happens to work in it. Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Like, I would play the Erebor Flamesmith in this over the Soothing, because
or even the Breaking the Fellowship, maybe.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah, I wouldn't, just because Breaking the Fellowship, I really kind of only want that in my my more aggro ones that care about that ring tempt. But I see your point of like destroy the whatever legendaries potentially that they have that you want to destroy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Up next.
This is aggro, I think. Yep. Or I mean, yeah, no, I think this is aggro. This is aggro. I mean, there are some cards in it again that give you a little bit of both, like Gandalf's Sanction, but this is, I would say, almost assuredly aggro.
Yeah, I think this is the example effectively saying, like, every card in here almost is aggro, with the exception of, you said Gandalf's Sanction. The thing is, that's just a good card. They picked it up, right? So
yeah,
just
it's
play
good.
it.
It's good. So yeah.
Glorious Gale is a little bit like it would rather have in the control, but can still be played in the aggro more as a later card, right? Like counter their expensive creature that's coming down as a tempo play. But yep.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, and it's interesting because this went 7-2, but I don't know. I don't think this is even the best version of the deck, right? War Beast of Gorgoroth, I think, is a marginal card. It's certainly not terrible, but it's not a high pick for me. Meneldor is okay, but I think he is also a little overrated in some cases. I'm not sure he benefits this deck super much. But I mean, it's definitely the aggro version of the deck. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting one where there's not a whole ton of tempt here. We have how much? One, two, three, four. The Bilbo's big though, like 5, 6 kind of.
5, yeah. Yeah, and Glorious, it can be a
7,
tempt if
yeah.
you counter a legendary, right?
Yeah. So
So-
they hit the critical mass I think they needed. I guess I didn't quite see that on first look, but some of them you'll see more like they go into the hard tempt, right?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Maybe we'll go to the next one.
Definitely the aggro version of the deck.
Yep.
I mean, Rohirrim Lancer definitely, is good there. I mean, they've got 3 ring temps at 1 cost. They've got one at the 2 level,
3
one
at the 3.
4, or 3 at the 3, one at
One of
the
the
4.
4. Yeah.
So yeah, they're definitely packing about 10 somewhere in this deck. So yeah, I would for sure.
Yep. All right, next one.
Yeah, definitely aggro as well. I would say Bilbo very good in the aggro version of this deck, and they got 2 of them. 3 Rally at the Hornburg, Raking the Fellowship. I mean, again, you're looking at, let's see, a Lancer, 2 Birthday Escapes. That's 3 tempts. You're looking at Breaking the Fellowship is 4/5. You're looking at 2 Bilbos is like, more, a
7
lot more.
plus, yeah.
Dreadful is the Storm.
Now we're at 8 plus. Yep.
You're looking at about 10 tempts in there. And I mean, yeah, this is definitely aggro.
Yep.
Although, yeah, I mean, you still see some cards, right? Like Hithlane Knots, right? Would definitely prefer a Soothing a Smeagol there.
Yep.
But I don't know what I would. I might have actually played the Battlescarred Goblin here instead, or Council's Deliberation even. Although they don't really have a lot of scry, so I'm not sure that would be worth it. But I would almost play the extra creature here. But
Yep. Completely agree. I think another key giveaway is Rohirrim Lancer presence. Like you don't play that in the control version, so.
Sure, yeah. And Rohirrim Lancer, I just love. I think it's a great card. I think it's criminally underrated in any of the formulations of red, because it's great in black red, it's great in blue red, it's great in white red. In most circumstances, right? Again, unless you're playing the control version of this, and then in case you don't want it, but. In any aggro deck, Rohirrim Lancer is actually a great card.
Yep. I will give the slight adjustment, or at least my opinion of that, of there are aggro decks that can avoid ring tempt. If you aren't getting the ring tempt cards, they're going to, And in those cases, Rohirrim Lancer is serviceable, but not that good. I will cut Rohirrim Lancer in a red aggro deck that has, 2 ring temps in it. Otherwise,
Sure, yeah, if you've got something better. For sure, right? It is not the end all be all, but I like a 1/1 menace, specifically because no one wants to block it, right?
Yeah.
It's just a consistent good damage every turn, and if you need to sacrifice it as a chump blocker, it comes with a bonus, right?
Yep.
And that's just good value in my mind for 1 mana.
Yep. Let's move to the next one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, I got to lean towards aggro with this. This one's kind of weird, I think, but the Horn of Gondor makes me lean towards aggro with it. But there's honestly not a ton of humans in it, so yeah, this one's a weird one, I think. But I'm going to lean towards aggro a little bit with it. But this is one of those ones that I think tries to split the difference a little bit.
I agree, and that's why I put this. I put some twists in here, by the way, and I think this one splits the difference and just kind of happened to be 7 and 2. It does enough with. I would put this a little bit more towards the control side of things in the Airborne Flamesmith can play with control. The Pelger Survivor can too. Rally, all the stuff. Deceive the Messenger is interesting. That can also play in both versions, but I think is a
Yep.
little better in the control. And really, you're getting your finishers are what you're seeing with the like Relentless Rohirrim and Erkenbrand and Oliphant. Now, Horses
Although
of
Erkenbrand,
Bruinen.
I don't actually think Erkenbrand is a very good card.
I do, but only in your like dedicated humans decks, and there's not enough here for it to be in there. I mean, there is the Horn of Gondor, which is maybe what he was going for with that, he or she. Um, on to the next one.
So this one is also, I think, kind of splitting that difference a little bit. You've got 2 Hithlane Knots, 2 Soothing Smeagol's. You've got a number of cards which play well in both. But it doesn't seem like it leans towards one or the other. I'm really actually somewhat interested in how this one went 7 and 2 at Mythic level. It does not seem, I will say it does not seem particularly strong. I mean, Gandalf's Sanction is a strong card. Fire Inscription is a good card. But this one, I think, tries to split the difference a little bit.
Yeah, so this one, I don't really think it really this. I think the first one I disagree. I don't think it does split the difference, although it is trying to play some cards that just fit into the aggro. This is control. The aggro ones that they're trying to fit in are Soothing of Smeagol just because they probably just wanted to play more instants and sorceries, and they didn't really have a whole lot of options, is my guess.
Yeah. Well, Battlescarred Goblin, I think, is also in the aggro version of the deck. I would lean that more in the aggro version.
Yeah, I think they just played that as a serviceable 2-drop. They wanted to have a 2-drop.
Yeah.
You can be attacking like Gandalf Sanction itself is not going to end the game completely, right? Like purely off of itself,
Sure.
you're going to want to get some damage in. Same with Fiery Inscription. All that one can kind of end it even more. But yeah, so
Grishnak, I also think I think Grishnak can play in either, but I would probably play him more in the aggro version, I think.
Agreed. But it's another one that it's a good enough card where you can play it in both.
Yeah.
So the only one, Soothing, is really leaning aggro, but it still is an instant that can buy you time, that feeds. They have 3 of the big bombs, right? It's 2 Gandalf Sanctions and Fiery. So that's why I think they're fitting in the Smeagol's, is because they can, and it helps feed that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. This is definitely more towards the control side. I think it does split the difference a little bit more than I would like if I was going to go in that direction. But again, like you said, it can entirely come down to what you get,
Exactly.
right? And sometimes you play the best version of the deck you can build.
Yep.
And clearly this was a good version of the deck. It went 7-2.
Yep. All right, we have a 7-0 here.
We have our first 7-0, I think. And this is definitely the control version of the deck.
Yep. Yeah, this is almost as clear as possible. The control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, I would, interestingly, Dreadful is the Storm. I think I would put more in the aggro version of the deck. But again, it comes down to what you get. And so, it's not. I don't hate it in this pick because, again, it effectively costs 2 on a Pelargir Survivor. It's a great trick to potentially block for 2 mana. But yeah, this is definitely control, and I can see it. I can see why it went 7-0.
Yeah. So sometimes you could have still a tempt sub package even within your control, right? Like with all the birthday escapes and the Rager's Firebrand that's picked up.
Yep.
I
and
think
the Dreadful.
That's what makes you decide, okay, Dreadful is good enough. I can even take my Rally at the Hornburg 1/1, block something and make that a removal with Dreadful as a Storm effectively, and get up to where I need to in Ring Tempt type of thing in order to tack on a Pelargir Survivor and get in that last bit of damage, especially when there's not a whole lot of top end here to finish the game outside of your Fiery Inscription and Gandalf's Sanction.
Correct. Yeah.
So.
No, I mean that's basically it, right? Yeah. Aside from a Dreadful as the Storm for 1 turn, Relentless Rohirrim gets you maybe a little bit, but is still pretty easy to remove. Gandalf could get you over the line if you do the 3 damage to target opponent, but yeah.
Yep. Next one.
This is the aggro version of the deck. It might even be the clearest version of the aggro version of the deck I think we've seen.
Yep.
Man,
I don't think it's the clearest,
I'm just jealous of this draft. It's a
but it's
good deck.
Yeah. They got in. They first of all, the Grishnoks are going to be great in that aggro with the Bilbo. Flame could be in either, but yeah, 2 Grishnoks and a Bilbo. Yeah, that's nice. Interesting, they didn't get any birthday escapes. But
sure. But it may be because they didn't take it, or then again, I've also seen things where they're taken very highly, so you just don't get the option, right?
Right.
But they've got Ranger's Firebrand, they've got Breaking the Fellowship ×2, they've got Bilbo, they've got does Flame Tempt? I can't remember. Flame of Honor? I don't think it does. Not. Okay. And then they've got Relentless Rohirrim's, right? So I mean, it's not as big a tempt package I think as you would like, but it's good. And Gandalf is actually great with that because it's card advantage every time you tempt.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that this one is kind of just a bunch of good stuff, more so, that does kind of it does toe the line a little bit between the aggro and control, but really it's like it's your higher end good stuff. That does play out aggro, if that makes sense. So your Bilbos, your Grishnoks, all that combined with a couple of rallies, something to clear the way with a smite, and then a tempt package along with it. Yeah.
And I'm looking at the sideboard on this one, and this person clearly started off, I think, wanting to go black-red, found out that black was not open, and switched to blue.
Yep. Yep.
Or maybe saw the Bilbo and the Flame of Honor and were like, okay, this makes sense. But anyways, we can go through it, but I'd be interested to see, because
just want to see kind of like
actually they pick one Flame of Honor, okay, and pack 2
Bilbo,
so maybe
I don't think they kept that way though. They
yeah, like I said, like they just went for it, right?
Okay, they picked up Dunling from
Bane, right?
Yeah, that led them. So they probably got some mixed signals here. Okay, yeah, you're getting your red, sure. Okay, so they just picked up some late black, actually. Yeah, so they didn't really change direction.
Yeah.
I wonder how long they kept. Yeah, so really they found some late black and they stuck with red blue.
Yep. Never mind. I was mistaken in that one. But all right, so next one, let's see. Definitely the aggro version of the deck.
Yeah, this is another one, like some of the most clear.
Yep, absolutely. Man, ballsy with 15 lands, but they have nothing that costs more than 4. I can see it. I like File of Galadriel in this too, because in the aggro version of this, you're going to play out your hand more often than not, and just being able to draw 2 every turn is great.
Yeah.
Little bit of ramp. I like File of Galadriel as a card in general, but I think you wouldn't want to play File of Galadriel in the control version of this deck. It just would be a bad card.
Yep. Agreed.
Control version, or sorry, aggro version of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
3 Quarrel's End is a lot, but I mean, I can see it. I can see it in this version of the deck. Although you don't have anything. This version, this deck doesn't have anything that gets you any benefit of your instants and sorceries and graveyards. Like, it doesn't have a Gandalf sanction, so I'm not sure I'd want to necessarily be discarding that much stuff. But you come with the card draw you have, and sometimes you don't get what you want. So
yeah, I think 4 card draw Quarrel's End actually works out well in the aggro version, simply because you are still impacting the board. Honestly, even in the control version, it works well because you're impacting the board, either your blocker or whatever.
Yeah.
But like with a tempt package on top of that, if you need that 1/1, you know what I mean, to get it on tempted and get on through, I think it works out pretty well. Which is
Yeah, no.
surprising. I would not have guessed Quarrel's End to be a good card and didn't early on. And then this is where the data helped correct me and see that, yeah, it seems to be Tormenting Voice for 2 mana, discard a card, draw 2. Adding 1 more mana for a 1/1 gives you enough value in one card to make it worth it.
Yep.
This one.
All right. This is an interesting one. I mean, I gotta lean that this is the aggro version of the deck. It has a few that split, but horses and I mean just Anduril is an obvious aggro card, right? Like, I can see. It's funny because you can often look at a 7-1 deck and be like, I can tell you exactly why this deck went 7-1. This deck went 7-1 because it has Anduril.
Yeah. So when I said, I won't leave you hanging there too long. I put this in as the another twist. This goes. You analyzed exactly right. When I looked at this, I thought the same thing. Like, okay, there's elements of control. There's elements of aggro. I see it leaning slightly aggro. They seem to kind of toe the line a bit, and as such, why did it do so well? There's an Anduril.
Right, yeah. Like, exactly. Like, I can tell you exactly why this deck did incredibly well, because, hey, I mean, that card is just borderline overpowered in so many ways, and any deck, you put it in any deck, and that deck is probably going to do pretty well as long as you draw it.
That's the key, and you have to draw it, and so the control cards that are in here help do that.
Help you do that, yeah.
I think those go up in where we said Hithlane Knots in general, like, not that great as a two, like, not in general, not even that good for your aggro decks. It still can tap something to get something in, and it draws a card and it scries one. In a deck with Anduril,
I want to play a deck that's like Anduril, like a bunch of Birthday Escapes, a bunch of Hithlane Knots, a bunch of Quarrel's Ends, and just like that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah, 100% on Anduril.
You'll just get Anduril and win the game, right?
And then they play their cast into the fire against you, and you're like, okay, auto concede.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. You scoop, but most people don't play that. Most people, and it's the same with things like Palantir, right? If you get that out on turn 3, you're probably winning the game, right? So yeah, I mean, but anyways.
All right, we have a couple more here.
Sure.
This one.
This one is, I'd definitely say, more on the aggro side. With the Ranger's Firebrand Temps, the Birthday Escape, you've got, Pelargir Survivors, Flamesmiths. Yeah, this is definitely on the aggro side.
See, I see this more as actually control, and my reason for that is, I guess you have a little bit of it's the temp package.
It's got 2 Hammers and 2 horses. I mean,
yeah, that's true. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. But that still feels a little bit control. So Aomer, obviously, yes, aggressive, but like, it's just good enough to be in either version.
Sure. Oh yeah. No, absolutely. If you get an Aomer, play it in almost any deck you get it in. But it's got like a 70% win rate. It's absolutely a good card.
Right. The Pelargir Survivors here look like what they're doing is helping you cast your other stuff to me. I'm not seeing. I see 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, really 5 temps.
Sure. No, there's not as many temps in this, but you've got a lot of direct damage with 2 Ranger's Firebrands.
But those are also good. Yes, those are good in both.
I agree. They're good in control. And then you've got the Sanction and the Inscription, which can go in either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I could see this kind of towing the line a little bit, but I guess for me, what really throws it into the aggro side is looking at the top end, right, with the horses and the Aomer.
So maybe this is interesting. To me, I would not let top end distract you on which version it is, because even the control does need finishers, right? I agree. I agree. Now, the horses are the most interesting one here. Now, like, maybe take out the horses and put in something else. I don't know.
Horses tempts, right?
Oh, horses does tempt. You're right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. They also had a ton of Rohirrim Lancers they decided not to play. Like, they could have made this a pretty good aggro deck.
Sure. Yeah, but what would you cut to play the Lancers? I mean, I guess I might cut the Pelargears or a couple of the Pelargears or something like that in favor of the Lancers, but
Yeah.
Pelargear's pretty good because you've got a lot of instants and sorceries in this.
Yeah.
Or a fair number.
That's a good
Like,
point.
Pelargear with horses is great. Pelargear with Lorien Revealed is great.
Yeah, I would cut a Glorious Gale if I wanted to go more aggro,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Glorious Gale is not going to get you much, and even maybe the Saruman's Trickery.
Yeah,
I could see
yeah.
cutting both of those and putting in the 2 Rohirrim Lancers, but that might be 2 of the 3 Rohirrim Lancers. Interestingly, they don't. There's a rally they don't play.
Yeah.
They don't play in the Improvised Club, which I think is an interesting choice too. I guess they don't. Again, they don't have a ton of creatures, but man, yeah, they've got. I mean, they've got a Breaking of the Fellowship too for the aggro version of the deck. They could have really
Right.
gone in a number of different ways with this.
Right, and they look to have chosen the more controlling version here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because you could easily play Quarrel's End instead of the Saruman's Trickery, right? Get more card draw, get another board presence. I guess Saruman's Trickery is board presence too, but
I wonder if they fell a little bit into the like just pick the highest win rate cards and play all those.
maybe. Yeah.
And it didn't work out bad. 7-2.
Yeah, they went 7-2 with this. This is a good deck. I mean, it's easy to nitpick, right? And Monday morning quarterback it a little bit, but at the end of the day, they trophied with this deck.
Yep. All right, and that was it. So
Okay.
yeah, I think that was an interesting discussion. We haven't really done a deep dive really into a particular archetype. We've talked about some, but this is a tricky archetype that I think will help a lot of people to kind of hear our thoughts and the different kinds of decks you can get into with them, to notice when they're good, when they're not good. And then based upon that, how early do you draft something? Stay open until you see which path you're going and then start picking up the rest of the whatever version you want, the control ones or the aggro ones.
Yeah, and I think this more than any other color archetype has 2 very viable options, right? Versus a lot of the other color archetypes, you don't see that as much, right? Yeah. You're either going to be control or you're going to be aggro. Like you're not going to there is a version of a black-red deck that you could build that would be more control. It's just nowhere near as good as the aggro version of the deck. So you build the aggro, almost everybody builds the aggro version of that deck.
Yep.
Same with, say, red-white, right? You could, for instance, potentially build like a red-white token-based deck that has removal like Hobbit's Sting, and you build it a little bit more control-y or something like that. But it's not going to be as good as the aggro version of the deck where you're just playing a ton of creatures and beating people down. But this one has 2 viable paths that you can take, and it's important to know which one you're going for.
Yep. Completely agree.
So thank you for joining us today. We hope this has been an insightful look into the blue-red color archetype and has given you a little bit of ideas for how to build your next deck and do your next draft. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.
See you in the next one.
See you in the next one.